Nobody in Vero's landing believed me, and I understood why. I was 13, I was the engineer's kid, and I had already been wrong once in public loudly about the Ashcourt Concord. 6 months earlier I'd stood in the Commons and told anyone who'd listened that the delegation ships weren't cargo haulers, that the vents on their hulls were weapons baffles painted over. I'd been wrong about the model number, right about the baffles. Nobody remembered the second part. So when the Concord came back with white banners and an honor guard and a magistrate named Doran Kesh who bowed to our counsel like he meant it, and they carried out a stone the size of a grain silo and called it the sundered egg, a relic of their old war, a gift of trust, I was the only person in the colony who didn't clap. "It's not a relic," I told my father. "Relics don't have a heartbeat." He didn't believe me either, but he let me help move it into the greenhouse annex because I was good with instruments and somebody had to log the humidity, and that was how I found out I was right and wrong at the same time. Wrong that it was a bomb, right that it was alive. I never told anyone that. I'd learned my lesson about telling people things. For 3 weeks I went out before shift and after alone, with a heat lamp I wasn't supposed to have, and a thermal blanket meant for the seedling beds. The shell was cold on one side always, no matter what the ambient reading said, like something inside it was starving for warmth and too proud or too far gone to ask twice. I talked to it. I know how that sounds. I told it about the greenhouse, about the frost warnings, about how the whole colony had decided I was the boy who cried wolf, and there wasn't much I could do about that except keep doing my job and hope the wolf never actually showed up. Some nights the heartbeat under my hand would spike and stutter, fast little flutters like something dreaming badly, and I'd press my palm flat against the cold side and just breathe until it slowed again. I kept a second log, off the books, timestamps nobody official would ever read, because somebody should know this thing existed as more than a prop for a ceremony. I told it about my sister's bad grades and the exact shade of green the greenhouse glass turned at dusk. I told it I didn't know what it was, only that it was cold and it was mine to keep warm, and that seemed to be enough for both of us. Turned out the wolf was inside the egg the whole time, and it liked the sound of my voice. The Concord scheduled the hatching for the Commons, in daylight, in front of everyone, a reconciliation bloom, Kesh called it. The whole colony gathered under white banners to watch the old war's grief become a gift. I stood at the back because nobody wanted me at the front. My mother squeezed my shoulder and told me to just watch quietly and not say anything, and I promised her I would, and I meant it, right up until the shell cracked. It didn't crack toward the Concord handlers who'd carried it in on a ceremonial litter, robed and gloved and trained for this exact moment. It cracked toward the back of the crowd, toward me. The thing that came out was smaller than I expected, and somehow worse than anyone had pictured, keel-spined, plated in wet green-black armor still soft at the seams. 4 amber eyes that found the crowd, found the handlers reaching for it with their calibrated gloves, and dismissed every one of them in under 2 seconds. It planted 4 clawed feet in the dirt, shook itself like a dog coming out of a river, and walked straight past 140 people to sit down in front of me. Then it put its head against my knee, and made a sound like a kettle deciding not to boil. The Commons went dead silent. I heard someone's drink hit the ground. Somewhere behind me a woman said my name in a voice I didn't recognize, the same voice that had called me a liar in the council hall 6 months back, except now it just sounded scared. Kesh's honor guard shuffled half a step closer to their magistrate, hands drifting toward the rods at their hips, watching Rask and then me, trying to decide which of us was the danger. "Easy," I said because it was shaking, and because that was the only thing I'd ever said to it that meant anything. "I've got you. Easy." Kesh's face did something complicated. For half a second I watched a man recalculate an entire plan in real time, and then he smiled the way he'd smiled at the council 6 months ago, warm and practiced, and said the hatchling was disoriented, that it needed to be returned to Concord care immediately for its own safety, and two of his robed handlers started forward with a containment collar between them like it was nothing, like they did this every day. Rask, I hadn't named it yet, not out loud, but the name had been sitting in my chest for 3 weeks waiting for a mouth to say it in. Rask came up off the ground between one heartbeat and the next, and the sound it made this time wasn't a kettle. The nearest handler stopped so fast he sat down in the dirt. It imprinted wrong, Kesh said, louder now to the crowd, not to me. This is a delicate creature, it doesn't understand danger. We need to secure it before it hurts the boy. He's not hurting me, I said. You are. You've had handlers reaching for it with a collar for the last 30 seconds and it hasn't moved except to put itself in front of me. That's not confusion. That's it deciding. I watched that land on some of the faces around me. Not all of them. Enough. Kesh stopped smiling. He said something short and sharp in Concord dialect, and his honor guard, 6 of them, armored, carrying rods I now understood weren't ceremonial staffs at all, stepped forward together. And I understood in the same breath that the relic story had always been a delivery system, that the sundered egg had been bred for exactly this, a weapon meant to imprint on a conquered handler and walk itself into whatever building they pointed it at. And that the only reason it hadn't gone off as planned was that, for 3 weeks, the only voice it had ever trusted came from a kid nobody believed. Rask didn't wait for the guard to reach us. It came off its haunches low and fast, a shape built for exactly this, and put itself flat between me and 6 armored men in the space of one breath, and the sound it made this time didn't stop at the edge of the commons. It went through the ground, through my boots, through the crowd, and every one of those 6 men took a step back that had nothing to do with training. Stand down, Kesh said to his own guard, fast now, no smile left at all. Stand down, that's an order. They already had. Nobody needed to be told twice that the thing crouched in front of them wasn't disoriented. It was choosing, exactly the way I'd told the crowd it was, and it had chosen the boy who'd kept it warm over the empire that had grown it. I put my hand flat on the back of its neck, the way I had every night for 3 weeks, and felt the plates there shift and settle under my palm like something unclenching. That's enough, I told it quiet, just for the 2 of us. They're not coming any closer. You did good. You did good. It didn't stop watching the guard, not for a second, but the sound in its chest dropped from that ground-shaking note down to something closer to a low idle, a threat held in reserve instead of spent, and somehow that was worse for Kesh's men than the growl had been. It meant the thing wasn't reacting anymore. It was deciding, on its own terms, exactly how much mercy this particular morning was going to get. My father found me a minute later, pushing through people who parted for him without really looking away from Rask. He put a hand on my shoulder and said my name like a question, and I said, "It's fine. He's fine. His name's Rask," and Rask turned his head at the sound of it like he'd been waiting 3 weeks for that too. Kesh tried, one more time, to make it about protocol, conquered property, conquered custody, a diplomatic matter above a colonist's jurisdiction, and our council chief, a woman who'd spent 6 months telling me to stop causing scenes, looked at the 4 amber eyes standing between a conquered magistrate and a 13-year-old, and told him the diplomatic matter was closed the moment his gift chose a side in front of 140 witnesses. They left before dusk. Nobody clapped that time either. I still get looks in the common some mornings, but they're different now. Rask sleeps against the greenhouse wall where the heat lamp used to be, too big for the annex within a season, and when I walk out before shift, he lifts his head and makes that same low kettle sound, and I still say the same 2 words, because they still work. "Easy, I've got you."